All right, welcome back, my friends, and here we go. We are straight into Patanjali Yoga Sutras, chapter 2, verse 20, and that verse says, dṛśṭā dṛśi-mātraḥ śuddho pratyaya-anupaśyaḥ. And when we talked about this yesterday, we were talking about how dṛṣṭā is the seer and śuddha is pure, and that's the real meaning there. Pratyaya and anupaśyaḥ are the mental modifications, and it appears that we see through those mental modifications. Now, Satchidananda had a very interesting take on this. He's saying, think about if pure light comes through a red crystal, then we get a red light that comes out. That's got nothing to do with the light. If the sunlight shines through a red lens or a red crystal, then we're going to get a red hue. There's no doubt about that. That's what this sutra is saying. We can only see through the mechanisms of Prakriti, through basically the sense organs in the mind and the eye as an actual biological device for seeing. And so as we take that information in, then we interpret it in our intellect, then we still color whatever it is we're seeing. And so that goes back to the very first chapter, and you can review some of those earlier podcasts. And speaking of podcasts, did you know that over 50% of people that listen to podcasts never subscribe to a podcast? They never give any feedback to the podcast hosts. So would you just consider dropping us a note, giving a review on your podcast host, and also just sharing this episode with a friend that you think might find it helpful? That's really great in the podcast world, the online world, and we appreciate you. Thanks so much. Let's jump back in. When we practice any kind of practice, especially if it's got a spiritual bent towards it, and I think all of life is spiritual, we just need to open our eyes to it. So if we're practicing, we want to take on practices that are going to help us really become clear and really start to understand exactly what it is that we're seeing. And we want to separate, let me own this. I want to separate who am I from what am I experiencing. Those two things aren't always those two things are never the same. There's who I am, and then there's what I am experiencing. And so my mind is going to create all kinds of perceptions that may not at all reflect reality in any way. Here's a very good example. Think about texting. Texting is this new form of communication we've got really in the last 20 years. Texting is terrible for clarity at times. Have you ever found that? You text something, there's no way I can read what really was meant to be said. I think this relates in the world of communication. And when we communicate only through the sole lens of texting, we leave loads and loads of room for error and inaccurate interpretation. And there's no way for me to interpret, understand, sense, take in any deeper meaning. I don't have any other cues that are physical that would go with the communication. I don't have a response immediately, and my mind starts to chirp and create all kinds of scenarios that aren't actually true. And if you're like me, sometimes my mind will make up the worst stories. Absolutely not true. There's no basis of reality, but there I am, stuck in this chirping, the story that I've created in my mind. There's no anchoring in reality. The same idea can be reflected in this sutra. We are pure consciousness. We are not the reflection of whatever the mind brings. We are not our stories. So what can we do? Well, this word mindfulness has been really overused in the modern world. But here it is. Mindfulness is still a great word because we need to observe what we're thinking. But then here's the trick. Don't react. Observe what you're thinking. Don't react. Sometimes we just need to sit in whatever the chirping is in the mind and not do anything with it. If you're someone who likes to journal, it can be excellent to write down what the thoughts are. Create some distance, create that little barrier, and that can help give us a little bit more perspective. If you write down a disturbing thought and you observe it without reacting, then a follow-up question you can add is, who do I want to be in light of this information? Who do I want to be? Not be mindful of this. not what do I have to do, what should I do, rather who do I want to be in light of this thought. Really, the stillness piece in yoga can help move us towards more understanding of our pure awareness. There's some self-inquiry that goes with that. But some of the practices specifically to yoga are very helpful, like pranayama or breath work, or even silent meditative walks without distractions, not even with your earphones in your favorite podcast. How can we start to create some space to witness our thoughts rather than be consumed with them? And that is really a bit of what this whole sutra is about. Okay, friends, that's it for today. I hope you find some of this helpful. Don't let the yoga get you down. Let the wisdom of your capital S self guide you. Let this stuff percolate in your mind. The right answers will come to you over time. You're here. You're doing the thing. You're doing the work. All right. Until tomorrow. Om. Peace. Out.